Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Wisdom of the Mystics. And it's just such a joy and honor to be here with you today with the, which way I'm pointing, the amazing Laura Topper. As we come here, exactly, twice a month on the second and fourth Tuesdays to each for all of us to deepen and learn about the different wisdom of the mystics of New Thought. And I just know that if you're here, you're guided here for your own spiritual growth and your opening and for you to tune into your mystical side within. And that's it. The mystical teachings are universal. And so as we learn more, we learn and grow. And it's how wonderful that is. And so I'm Reverend Kathy Mastroiannini with the Science Mind Archives and Library Foundation, who's around to preserve, protect, and present science, mind, philosophy, and wisdom for all of us. And I'm here with the amazing Laura Topper, who's going to introduce our super guest and this week's mystic. Take it away, Laura.
Oh, thank you, Reverend Kathy. Hi, it's great to be back here with you this week, and welcome everybody that's watching right now or at any point in the future. Welcome into today's Wisdom of Mystics. And you are here with us on New Thought Media Network as we share today on a very, I think, renowned mystic who is still doing amazing work in the world. And I was reminded this week, that many of us enter into a spiritual community or a pathway because we're interested in the metaphysical side of spirituality, and then something happens, an opening within us where we can be really guided to know more about the mysticism of how life works. And this week, our super guest, wow, Reverend Elzia Sekou, who's no stranger to the network. He presents the New Thought Today program with Reverend Robert, and he's part of the Science of Conversation series on the network, and Ministers Talking It also on Fridays, and senior minister for CSL Denver, he's doing fantastic work here in Denver with the center that he brings to life and brings joy into that center and community. And this week, Reverend Elzia is here to present Richard Rohr. Really interesting. I'm excited, Reverend Kathy.
Me too. I can't wait to learn more.
And I'm going to bring welcome to Wisdom of the Mystics. Welcome here, Reverend Elzia.
Hey, good afternoon, and thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here with two of my favorite co-hosts because they, for me, what you guys do or what you ladies do is this idea of the mystic, where there's that cross between orthodoxy and actual practice at not only a cosmic level, because most people think about mystics at a cosmic level, but I love the idea that we're looking at mysticism and some of its features at a practical level and how we put this in our everyday life and how we make it real. And in a lot of cases, the mystics compel us not to just look at the roses. Sometimes we have to look at the fertilizer, if you will, that causes the roses to grow. So I love that, and I'm happy to be here.
Oh, I you've just said, it's this too is God expressing. I've been saying that regularly for the last 3 years, over and over and over. And so tell me about the mystic that you have chosen, who is still walking this earthly plane, Richard Rohr. We're really interested. I'm really interested to learn a little bit more about him as a person. Who is he? What is he here doing right now? And what does he stand for?
Well, one of the good things about Richard is he's still with us. He was born in 43 in Kansas, and he now runs a center in Albuquerque, New Mexico, which is not that far from me. It's probably about maybe an 8-hour drive from me. And he has a center there, the Center for Action and Contemplation. That is a functioning place. You can go there and see him and do some of his work. He has a website that you can go. He has podcasts and everything. But, the good thing about Richard is that he's a living mystic, if you will, and he comes out of the order of the Franciscans, which is from St. Francis Assisi. And if you know a little bit about St. Francis Assisi, and there's a lot of rumors, and I won't bring some of them up of his lineage and where he came from and so forth. So I'll allow the audience to go out and do that on their own. But his order, the Franciscans, his order was an order of poverty, travel, and living in urban areas, right? So that was the basis of St. Francis Assisi, which was his idea, if I could kind of capsulize it, was this idea of being in the world, to learn life and spiritual practices and deeper meanings in some of the scriptures by being in the world. And there's no better way to be in the world than through poverty and traveling and living in an urban environment, because you're going to see everything and you're going to encounter everything. And so that's the order that Richard is coming from.
And just hearing that, to me, what I
Wow.
can feel in my heart is compassion.
Yes.
It's just a sense of compassion. It's really going into your heart and feeling each other's hearts, where from there you can really go into oneness. I mean, I think that's where oneness comes in, is when we can tap into that level of compassion. So I like him already.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you say that, because for Richard, one of the things that he uses as a teaching tool is the serenity prayer. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I can change and those that I can't, and difference to know the difference between the two, and everything in there is a statement or a testimony to being immersed in the oneness, knowing that they're as Ernest Holmes would say, God is not divided against itself, or a house divided against itself cannot stand. And so I look at this serenity prayer that Richard uses as a teaching tool, as a way of saying, they're hidden, if you will, things. They're hidden factors, and we know that to be true based on quantum physics, that there are things that we don't see that are active in our lives, that are active in the world and the universe. And so we have to grant serenity to that, because everybody don't know about quantum physics, and if they do, they don't know how it all works. So you have to surrender to that. And I think, as we look at the expansion now of Ernest Holmes' statement, I look forward to the day that religion and spirituality, science and spirituality walk together. We're in those days right now. And so it's opening up a world that is totally different.
Absolutely.
So he's really,
Go ahead.
He's really punctuating that this is God expressing, it is all God, and who are we to kind of divide it up and say this is good and this isn't good, or this should be like this and this shouldn't be like that. It's all
Yes.
God, and when we can accept that in our hearts, we're living a different kind of experience.
Yes.
Of acceptance.
And Richard has a book called Things Hidden, right? And in that book, he looked at the biblical record of human evolution. Which, and he talks about these evolving experiences with God, and it opens up the door again for us to begin to look at God beyond the orthodoxy and beyond the doctrine. Because if you go back to the St. Francis of Assisi's charge, if you will, it was to get out to take these principles and apply them in a less than ideal situation, right? And that's key.
So I've just put up here the St. Francis prayer. Where there's hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. So he's really acknowledging that we're living in an experience of polarity, and we can pour love into it all.
Yes, and because there's that. I'll say it's age-old adage of the divine paradox, right? That is present in all spiritual, religious, ideological, philosophical systems. And we know in the ancient times, all of those were just synonyms in a lot of ways of each other. We've now expanded them out into different areas of study. But at some point in the ancient times, those were tangentially and more coupled together as the same thing. And so when we look at the hidden things, looking at this divine paradox, a thing is, there's the saying that goes this: without up, down has absolutely no meaning. So there's a paradox, if you will,
right,
of is there such a thing as up or down, right? Because they only exist in relationship to each other. And so when St. Francis of Assisi in that prayer says, give me faith, right? He's talking about somebody has told me there's this thing called up or down. I can't quantify it or qualify it categorically, so I have to have faith and move in that direction. And when I do that, when I step out there, then eventually that faith will turn into a knowledge, and that knowledge will turn into a knowing. And that's what mystics do. And I kind of think that's what Rohr does, in that, there's the saying that is attributed to the Taoist movement that says, those who say do not know, and those who know do not say. Because we know that there are hidden things, and we know that there's a matter of faith. And from quantum, we know that my faith and my acknowledgement of certain hidden things bring them into life. And so, because each one of us are different, we each come to the table with a different perspective, a different set of knowledge points. That reaction to the spiritual world is going to be different for each one of us. And so that's why you see mystics and most often giving lessons in stories and parables and things like that, so that it's not categorical that if you do exactly this exactly will happen. If that makes sense.
Wow.
That is wow.
Total.
So going to Richard Rohr, what would you say was his main teaching?
for me, the thing that I got from Richard that really sticks with me is just that looking at all things as being spiritual teachers. And in a book that he has that's my favorite, it's called Falling Upward, A Spiritual Life or Spirituality for the Second Half of Life. And since I'm in the second half of life, I'm probably partial to that. But he speaks of in that book, he speaks of this whole idea of in the first half of life, we're concerned with identity and performance and achieving, and overcoming challenges. But when we get to the second half of life, we're dealing with these paradoxes, right? We're dealing with, I may have taken a whole half of my life, if you will, being dedicated to a certain practice or principle. And, in some cases, they may or may not have worked as I expected. But now I'm in a different stage of life, and I'm not trying to achieve myself. I'm not trying to convince anybody or any of that, but I still need to have a spiritual path. And so in this book, he looks at that, I think, very well, and looks at, how do I gain spiritual guidance through falling down or failing or those types of things that often, at least in spirituality anyway, they're not brought up. They're not talked about that much in New Thought.
And there's a kind of paradox there right now, because I believe that in our community, in our spiritual communities, I mean, of course, we're across range and population wise, and yet many in our communities I see and feel as being in that second part of life, and are seeking to discover spirituality or discover ourselves in a new way, in a fresh way, where we can kind of really open up to a divinity, rather than, like you talked about, identity. It's like seeking that the big capital I identity, rather than striving to find the immature identity in that first half of life.
And I think that's if I had to look at Richard and capsulize him in a word, it would be that on this journey called life, how do we go about understanding and understanding heartbreaks and disappointment and our first love of life, which is to go and explore? How do we wrap that up into stepping stones to joy, right? There's a saying that's said that, if you're never tested, it's going to be very difficult for you to give a testimony, right? So if you have a testimony, that means you've been tested. And so when we look at how spirituality and mystic spirituality, it's supposed to be a working thing. Like Jesus's things, I'm in the world, but not of the world. Mm-hmm. And the only way to do that is I have to have gone through something to be able to look at it at a higher level.
Yes.
And that's one of the practical, I think that's one of the practical things that he brings up, or he highlights at least, that for you to understand, and especially as ministers and practitioners and, counselors, or however people want to term themselves, I know, one thing in practitioner training and ministerial training, they always say, you can counsel better from the place that you have been, right? So I can't talk about I don't know. Here's a real stark paradox. I can't talk about giving birth because I never gave birth, right? So I can give you a theoretical or textbook or any of this kind of stuff, but I cannot give you categorical anything about giving birth. But if I said I I want to talk about running a marathon, just using some start kind of examples. Well, I ran a couple of marathons, so I can give you some factual, insightful, spiritual information about that. And I think what Rohr is trying to espouse upon is that if we're going to be leaders, examples, whether it's lay leader or perceived established leader, we can't lead where we've never been.
And so I love that with his Center for Action and Contemplation, I mean, the word action is in there. And so to encourage really taking action and learning more, the more action we take, the more we have that level of compassion. Like what you said about St. Francis or the Franciscan order, poverty, travel, living in urban areas, you're going to really have a deeper understanding of where everyone is. And from there, come from a place of love and really support them.
Yes.
And support others on that journey, but contemplation too. So it's going into that mystical realm. It's going into that inner wisdom, into the oneness of spirit. But it's they're walking hand in hand, is what I'm getting from that.
Right. Well, because one thing Rourke speaks to, he talks about this whole thing in modern theology. It is revealing a strong tendency or strong growth point, if you will, toward participation. Right. We now know we can no longer just be in the closet meditating and praying, as opposed to the traditional way, which is observation, affirmation, moralisms, and being a part of a group. That works in maybe in an ideal world. But when we're looking at what we're facing now with different environmental, different societal, different humanistic issues, we can no longer take those kind of stance. Because there's a saying in the African American tradition that says, we may have come over here being the United States, in different boats, but we're all on the same ship now. And we have to take care of this ship if we're going to survive. And that's just not the earth ship, but that's the relationship ship and all of the other kinds of things that take place. And so that part, I think, he talks about this whole thing of getting to your true self. And as far as I know, the only way to get to your true self is you got to go through something.
So what advice do you think Richard Rohr would give? So I think a lot of us here on the planet right now are going through stuff.
Yes.
I mean, a lot of things are happening. I've noticed all around me, all these souls are fleeing the planet. It's just really an impressive time where you just sit back and go, wow. How would Richard Rohr approach that? Or what would he say about going through stuff?
Yeah, I think, one of his cornerstones would be, it's an adventure. We have to prepare ourselves for a great adventure where we get to live this life that we were born to be in, where when we look at a lot of the Greek stories of Jason and the Argonauts or some of these kinds of Greek mythologies and stories, all of them deal with adventure. And the underlying premise of them is that to get to know not only life, but ourselves at a different level, at a level of freedom and danger and inquisitiveness that awakens us to some unexpected happinesses pop up, or we stumble into some radical grace as we're out there and begin to look at life in a different way, and gives us this sense or idea of a deeper responsibility to things, for ourselves, for others, for the planet.
Those words were just on the tip of my tongue as you were saying them, put a deeper sense of personal responsibility. Because it's feeling to me as if he's tuned, he's really using St. Francis as his own template. If that's the correct word, I don't know, or as he's taken this teaching on to really immerse oneself in the difficulty rather than trying to run from it, and to be a part of it and be the solution for it within it, rather than standing apart from it and speaking to it from a seemingly other place. And for me, it feels as if he's saying, right, we're all mystics. We are each capable of having an effect in this world of form with the way that we are being within ourselves, and then take action in the world. We can all do this. We have a responsibility for this, to be this.
Yeah, and I think one of the things he has in the opening of the book, he has a couple of statements, one by Carl Jung and one by Native American tradition. By the one by Carl Jung, it says, what is a normal goal for a young person becomes a neurotic hindrance in old age, right? And then the Native American aphorism is, no wise person ever wanted to be younger. So, one of these things is to shift,
right,
to create this wholeness, if you will, of looking at life in its totality. And one of the things the reason I like this book so much is that all of our literature, a lot of our movies and stories are all geared toward the beginning of life, the younger part, or the first half of life. There's very little, he suggests, and I would agree, there's very little stuff about how to be successful and continue to grow spiritually in the second half of life. And so we know just by when we look at stories or books where there's a young person and an old person that's the teacher, we see the contrast, right? The young person is all energized, and the old person is saying, all right, well, let's slow down, let's think about this, let's not rush into things, because there's a wisdom there. We've gained some wisdom after rushing into 2 or 3 things ourselves, and now we have a testimony, right, for that test.
True.
Yeah. And I'm reading here that that Richard Rohr is one of the most popular spirituality authors and speakers in the world right now.
Yes.
Wow.
Because he's speaking, for so long. And when we look at the self-help movements and all the different movements that came out in the late 80s, early 90s, right? My opinion is that they were all geared towards self-expression and self-actualization at the exclusion of dealing with reality. And by that, I mean, if I'm looking at something and I'm saying to myself, I'm not proficient in a thing, my positivity toward it or my attitude toward it is one component. But maybe a bigger component is, have I practiced that thing? Have I learned that thing? Have I put myself in a position to be proficient in martial arts or whatever it may be, so that when I get to a situation where I have to use it, I don't need positivity. Positivity will help, and it will elevate my level of practice or execution. But it's really about me experiencing the tenets of that thing, no matter what it is, and how we activate it. And that's the gift that Rohr brings to me.
So he's really he's bypassing the spiritual bypass here.
Yes. 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 And we need that now more than ever, right? You know, we look at
Absolutely.
after COVID, we look at the you know, the different studies coming out about the decline in membership or attendance to all systems, churches, mosques, synagogues, temples, all the numbers are down, right? And I look at it especially when I look at Rohr in this book that I really love about him, is that the people that are still going are the people in the second half of life. Those people in the first half of life are not attending as much because, as he said here earlier, we was making a point that they are looking for practical ways to make this stuff happen because they have issues that they deal with, whether it's personal or environmental, that it,
Yes.
you know, as Ernest said, we need to treat and move our feet.
Yes.
And so when these centers and whatnot are not providing that kind of environment or that kind of direction or leadership, however people want to term it, when that's not there, we go lacking. And I think when I look at the works of Richard is kind of building an evolution, if you will, as he said, you know, he's looking at this evolution of things of how do we create systems and programs where we have action and contemplation that allows people as they evolve through life to find their place.
I think that makes a lot of sense to me. I think I really value that. And as you said, you can have a deeper understanding and more for working with people. So for the folks in the second half of life, so why do you, I know you've kind of said it, but why do you think they're going to church more? Why are they the ones who are in the seats?
Well, I think, you know, part of it is just training, right? Most of the people in the second half of life, definitely baby boomers and probably millennials, the next after the baby boomers, they grew up in a tradition where they had a family practice that they went to the church, they went to the synagogue or the mosque or whatever, and so it became a training. I won't say habitual, but it became a cultural custom.
Right, that's what I was thinking.
And there was an affinity to that because there is something that you get from that it, you know, if you go to a place that has great music or somebody has great prayers or great storytellers in those traditions, as a kid you can be, you know, you can be activated by that. And so as we come older now, we're still there, but a lot of us, you know, when our kids were born and we didn't want to, you know, we was in a whole different era that, you know, we didn't want to force them and so it created a whole nother thing. And so now we're stuck with, you know, the younger people are a lot more freer, I think, and they're not stuck to a tradition that we were. And that's where our challenge now is going to come from. How do we begin to cross or merge the traditional orthodoxy or religious precepts with action? And when we can find that, now we got something better. So
I think that I'm by you bringing him forwards, Reverend Elzia, because I think for me he's saying, right, there is no time anymore. We are all participatory in this life, and we all have a responsibility to take that action or to be the action, and for mysticism to be a verb.
Yes, Yes. Because he there's a statement that he makes, um, this whole idea of grace, right? He talks a lot about grace. And grace, if we recall, grace is this idea of good things happening to us. Um, it's a way of being in the world that we don't know why, we don't know how. It's just grace. And so that creates a different kind of expectation, or a different kind of way of engaging the world, when everything that happened to you, some of it doesn't have anything to do with you. It's just grace. Now, some people say in the right place at the right time, or luck. I mean, over time, these spiritual ideas have taken on more popular terms, but that's what we're talking about. When you talk about luck, you're talking about grace. And that's what he brings forth.
Nice. I was thinking about that the other day, because again, all this weird stuff on the planet's happening, and one of my teachers called it the mystery. It's like, this is the mystery. We don't really know why, but I actually like grace. I think that has a little more grace to it, and a little, but the mystery too is just, again, in Science of Mind and New Thought, a lot of times we say, we caused it. What did you do, to make that happen or something, instead of going, wow, it's grace. It's the mystery, and it's really how we respond to it is where our power is. Life is going to happen to all of us. Life just happens, but for us to be able to use these spiritual principles and practices, and to pause and to breathe and to go within and to use that contemplative stuff, and then from there to open, to follow guidance, and to come from love, so we can be loved no matter what bizarre stuff's going on in the world. We can be loved.
Right.
I like that.
And that's a great point, because when we talk about mystery, that sets the stage for that there's still a whole lot of stuff we don't know. No, we've come a long way, right, in trying to understand life and all the things that go along with it, but it's still a mystery.
Right. True. It is.
And so we have that in the back of our mind, right? But at the same time, we know that there are certain quantum principles and scientific principles and all these other things that work categorically.
Yes.
We know if we put fire to wood, if it ain't wet, it's gonna burn, right? And then you have the whole idea where we look at principles, like there's the principle of electricity, but we can get electricity through hydro, turbine, fossil fuel, nuclear. There are many different ways to satisfy the principle of electricity, but the laws or the actual practical steps to make that happen varies. And we still come out with the exact same thing, electricity.
Right. And we can use electricity if we use it wisely, we can have light. And if not, we could be electrocuted.
Yes.
And I mean, it's just, that's where being mindful and learning. And I think that's what Richard Rohr and his wonderful, there's his website, Reverend, or I'm going to call you Reverend Loris, has up here on the screen here. And he talks about too, for his school, that is a place that people can really delve and go within.
Yeah, because that's the key, right? It's like we can have all these things happen to us, but if we don't contemplate them, which is different from meditation, right? We have to contemplate what has happened. Why did it happen? What was my part in it? And from that, we begin to get an understanding and a spirituality that moves beyond whatever plateau we are at that particular time.
And for me, this feels There was just a lag here. I'm just gonna carry on. Is that okay?
Yes.
On what you're saying, it feels to me as if this is integral theory. This is taking us from the into that next stage, out of the me into the we, where we are consciously making decisions and choices that involve everybody. And rather than wanting, yes, we have to do our own personal healing and revealing, and that's a huge part of it. And then the next piece is we take this out, we do something with it, we do something productive. There are more startups now happening than ever before that are socially aware, social enterprise businesses that are taking people's problems into consideration as a part of their business model. And for me, this is the new kind of ministering. For me, this is like, we can minister with business in this way, and we can really of what's going on and change it, be a part of that change.
Yes.
In a practical way.
And the interesting thing you bring up for me there is this idea, we often hear and maybe talk about this whole idea of initiations, right? Or rites of passages, right? And they all involve, and they have different names for them, but they all stem from this leaving a comfortable place, going to an uncomfortable place. And it is that uncomfortable place that awakens the consciousness. Right? When you look at the prodigal son, let's say, the prodigal son is just that, right? He thought he was ready to deal with life. He went out there and found out, I knew what I knew, but there's a whole lot that I didn't know, right? And that same story, if we look at the story of Adam and Eve, which, we know people have various interpretations of that, but one of the interpretations is this whole idea of not dealing with the tree of knowledge, because that awakened a consciousness. And so now with those two things go together. That's a divine paradox right there. And so that's kind of the stuff that Rohr deals with.
Yes.
How do we deal with this paradox of doing the thing that we're not supposed to do, but it's that thing that we're not supposed to do that gives us the consciousness that sends us to God.
That's awesome. I love that. That's a great summary of that.
It is, isn't it?
Yes. So what would you say? I know we've kind of talked about, but what would be some practical applications for our viewers here on New Thought Media Network and the archives? What would you say Richard Rohr would say?
I think, one of the things would be the question of looking at the life experiences, really looking at our life experiences and trying to figure out what we've learned from it. What do we know for sure that we've not something we've read? My father used to always say, I'm telling you what I know, not what I heard, because now I can speak differently. And then, in this terms of contemplation is to begin to contemplate what is mine. We have a saying as what is mine to do, right? To be honest, like some people's part may just to be a cheerleader. I don't have the wherewithal or whatever to be on the battlefield, so to speak, but I can supply food. I can supply fresh rations, and begin to look at life in that way as to if we're really serious about making a better world, and as we say, a world that works for everyone, a world that works for everything, and that now we bring the animals and the plants and everything in there. I need to find what's mine to do. The water that causes the plants to grow never gets mad at the sun because it dries it all up. It understands the process. And that's one of Rohr's things. He understands process, and that life is process, and that the only way to understand the whole is to understand the process. So that would be the second thing. And I think a third thing would be to begin to look at, and this is a tough one, how do we pass this information on? How do we pass it to those who are our contemporaries and those that may be younger than us? There is a poem that I learned when I was in college called "I'd Rather See a Sermon," and I'm suggesting that is the way we do it. And it goes, "I'd rather see a sermon than to hear one any day. I'd rather one walk with me than just show the way. The eye is a better pupil and more willing than the ear. Advice may be misleading, but examples are always clear." And so that's what we have to begin to live this stuff. We have to begin to create a world where we are trying to actualize these principles. And then we take from Richard Rohr's understanding that we're going to make mistakes. We're going to find ourselves in situations that we didn't even think we could ever find ourselves in. But then how do we turn that into a spiritual lesson? Because that is the cycle of life. And that's where the real work comes in.
And I love what you've just said of how to turn it into a spiritual lesson, because it's so easy to want to wriggle out of different circumstances and situations without actually looking at that unseen, getting into that mystical place and having that hard conversation with ourselves. Yes. To get clear on what it is, that piece of healing, that piece of revealing, that understanding, that compassion that Reverend Kath was talking about, to get to that place of compassion. It's really beautiful. And I love it that he's a Franciscan master of theology, and he's a Franciscan priest, and it just feels so many kind of tentacles that really cross over into New Thought.
Yes.
In a deeper or a different way, the same.
And he's kind of considered a New Thought Christian, if you will, right? Because
right.
We often either go to the spiritual bypass, but we go to it only on the positive side. We don't talk that much about the other side, which is if we make a mistake, to condemn ourselves and then go into another spiral, right? And it is the divine paradox from those two things that creates the real person in the middle. And that's what we're looking for now. We have so many people that are propped up. What we need now is something totally different.
No, I love that. And I love what you said is what is mind to do to learn from what's going on. And go ahead. I think Laura was talking about being authentic.
Yeah, so
that's really being authentic with ourselves.
Yeah. And once we do that, we can then begin to create this life that works for everyone. Because I don't judge you because you fell down. I fell down too. And I know what it takes to get over that and to get back up. And so now we begin to operate from those kind of premises, not some superiority judgment, but from a compassion, grace standpoint that allows us to create an arm and a hug for everybody, no matter what the situation, whether it's a hug of celebration, a hug of upliftment, or just a pure hug of joy.
To help us fall upward.
Yes.
Beautiful. It really is. It's so meaningful and so powerful. And I think one of the things that I just absolutely love is that he's still here and he's doing this work, and that we can really tap into him and watch him and learn in real time right now.
Yeah, because I have intentions to go down to his center. I just got to make the moment.
Right. And so we're so grateful that you were here to
Fantastic.
present.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Yes.
And these are the type of conversations that we have to, I believe, have, because we have to become active in this, and we have to begin to be the lesson, to be the leader, not just be a talking head and teacher. We have to start having our own failures and our own successes, and be an example to others of how you grow no matter what the situation is. Because plants
Absolutely.
grow, plants grow whether there's sun or no sun, right? They still growing.
Yeah.
So thank you for having
Wow.
me.
Thank you so
I look
much.
forward to coming back
Thank you for being
sometime soon.
here.
No, we really appreciate it. I know
Yes.
our
Yes,
viewers
you
really
will
appreciate it
stick.
too. Definitely.
Have a blessed day.
Hi.
Thank
Sounds good.
you.
Thank
And
you.
you. Thank you so much. That was amazing. And
That was.
for those of you that are watching now, yes. Wow, Reverend Kathy, wasn't that just such a blessing and a treat to have Reverend Elzia here today talking on Richard Rohr.
Yes, absolutely, Laura. No, I really appreciate it. And I just loved, I just felt going deeper just listening to it, and again, a lot of times, so we can use everything that happens in our life as a gift and a lesson, but also we can use it as an opportunity for us to learn more about who we are. I loved your word authentic. We can accept who we are, but then what is ours to do? Because I really believe that each one of
Yeah.
us has some kind of life lesson that comes to us our way, and that we can use that, like, for our, it doesn't have to be a ministry, but for how we show up for our higher purpose in life, and that we can really, uplift and change the world in a positive way. And I love how you do have the Science Mind archives on the screen right now. So if people want to learn more, we have
I
all
do.
under sciencemindarchives.com. Feel free to donate to the archive so we can continue to preserve, protect, and present this life transforming wisdom of new thought. We are here for you, and there's outrageous resources on that website for you to delve in and to learn more and to go deeper into your own personal mystic. And just grateful that, and also all the Wisdom of the Mystic shows under free wisdom. You find Wisdom of the Mystics, and you can watch our past shows too, which is really a wonderful thing. So we're grateful. And what about you, Laura? What
That's
was kind of like your,
fantastic. And yes,
what was kind,
your website is amazing. I love your website. Um, I love the website and everything that it has. I'm delving in more and more and reading things and learning, and it's so great what you are doing, serving and presenting the work of Ernest Holmes and keeping the spirit of it absolutely alive, present. And so, yes, check out the scienceofmindart.com. And of course, New Thought Media Network, we have a new website too, which is great. Reverend Robert working on the website, updating it, creating space to show the shows and the broadcasts and all of the different things that we do here. And you can find the programming, and of course, like us on YouTube, and then you'll be notified daily with what's coming up. We have 3 prayers a day on the network. So just go to YouTube and subscribe, and you can find out more about the wonderful programming here on New Thought Media Network. And I've also popped up the donate button for the network. If you feel that you love the network and all that it's doing, then yes, donate in and be a part of the conscience of the vision for bringing these teachings, keeping these teachings in people's minds and hearts, to remind us of who we are as love, just as Reverend Elzia has done today with Sticks.
No, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. New Thought Media Network has such a variety of shows. And so just go and scroll through. I mean, whatever wisdom you may need. If you're going through a challenge that you're in the mystery, go to New Thought Media Network, and I'm certain the perfect show will pop up for you that will speak to your soul. I
Yeah.
mean, like Laura's cosmic prayer. I mean, there's just so many ways that we can use these spiritual tools to truly touch, teach, touch, and transform our lives. It's very powerful. And we're grateful. We're
Oh,
in
I love
spiritual
that.
community when we come together. It's so powerful to love and support each other too. So we're grateful you're here.
Yes. Yes. Thank you for being here today. And it was a great broadcast. And we will be back here in the next couple of weeks. And stay tuned in to the network. There'll be more programming after I've left this show now. So have an amazing rest of your day wherever you are on this planet.
Thank you so much. Take good care. Bye.
Bye for now.